Wait. How dare this man wear your dad's face? Who taught him to sport jack-up jeans and odd socks? Where he actually walks with the same bop, hands behind his back, fingernails filled to the brim. If someone asks him why he's squinting when there's no sun, thought only your dad did that. Except now, he's shaking awake cigarettes the way your dad does and offers you one. How'd he know to offer you one? Swear this guy holds trauma like he owes it a favor. Swear he looks just like you. Swear he's just like your dad. Except he is not him. He is better. He is here. Sweet. So that was poetry. I think most of you are still here, so that's an encouraging sign. Thank you. Yeah, I've been doing poetry for close to 6 years now, and I've gone from performing in the back of the smallest coffee shop you could possibly imagine to performing in slightly bigger coffee shops. But I also got to get to perform in spaces like this for TEDx, which is really nice. And in all my time I've been performing, there's always been this one question, this huge question in the back of my mind. And it's this big imagine if question. And the question is, imagine if you were into poetry when you were younger. And you might be thinking, oh, you just did a nice little poetry performance there, thank you. Why weren't you into poetry when you were younger? It's a great question, because that's where school comes in. Now, look, my school was great. I had a great time there. I made some great friends. I had some great memories from there. So if I was in school, if there was one thing that I could change, I would change the introduction to poetry. In fact, if I was in school, I would tell everyone to keep looking at the heaven in all their year 7 faces. I would smile in every detention, piss off all the same teachers, bargain for every spare pen. I would wake up late accidentally on purpose, then jump the back gate, stroll into class like it was calm. Attending after school detentions like they were extracurriculars made for me and all the brothers. All of them sat in smirky silence. As soon as the hour was up, we would run to our nearest cages. Smirks stretched to laughing faces, creating memories we didn't realize could be hung atop a mantelpiece. If I could do it all again, I would take every year 7 antic to a whole different level. With Adam and Hamza and Abdi and Uzi and Jimmy and Kasim and Jazz and Ahmed and every brother who burns in my bones. Always running in the hallways, snowballs in our blazer pockets until one day we got caught breathless, spending the rest of term with no lunch in detention. Brother, no hesitation, I'm running it all back. Every scene, camera shot, tragedy, line delivery, B-roll, setup, and outtake. Trust me, we are out here right on cue. I'm telling you, if my brothers were here, if my brothers were actually here, I would shiver at the shared smile lines, never forgiving time for what it took, and appreciating all that it gave. And I would bargain for one more detention. And I would reason just one more time, brother, give me one more life. So yeah, thank you. I love performing that poem so much. I loved writing it. It was fun to write. It's true to me. It's within reach. It's honest. It's raw. It's like everything that I think poetry should be. It's a connection. And I'm sure that the World War poems made sense in the time period that they were written in. And I'm sure that they were amazing. And World Wars are important historical moments. But in the same way that they were historical and important then, we need historical and important moments right now that are happening today. And the tide is slowly changing, thankfully. There's a brilliant poet out there called Caleb Femi, who has, he's very celebrated in the poetry community. And his poem, 13, is now, for lack of a better word, it's been inaugurated into the hall of GCSE poetry. It's now taught in schools across the nation. And it's such a good story. I won't spoil it, you have to go read it for yourselves. But it's such a good poem for young people to read. It's true, it's honest, it's what's happening today around them in the society that we live in today. So the tide is slowly changing, but on the flip side of that, there's a heartbreaking realization that I had where I realized that in school I did want to learn poetry. I would have loved to have learned it if I was introduced to it properly. And that's through my love of rap music. Not so much more the music, but the lyrics. I used to be obsessed with the lyrics. There's this website called Genius that just sort of annotates all the words. And I would go through and read all these like words to these amazing songs, and I would analyze and annotate and understand, okay, so Lil Wayne here is talking about pathetic fallacy and that links to this line, and Eminem's structure here sort of, and I was revising rap lyrics when I should have been revising poetry that was gonna come in my actual exams. And you could see the creativity that I just yearned for. I would do all the work out myself and discuss them with friends, and I would go online and research and, hey, did someone else come up with my interpretation? No, they have this idea and how that links with, it was a whole crazy, creative rabbit hole that I would just love to do. And so poetry could have been that for me had I been exposed to the right type of poetry that I now write, that I now love, and that I now can't get away from. And so that's kind of where I would, again, making the point, we need to make poetry more accessible. We need to give poems that young people would completely fall in love with, that they would want to annotate. And then once you've gotten them through that ballpark, then throw them down the deep end into the war poems, and at least then they can start to understand and say, okay, that came from this, and they share the same sort of things, and there's you can play around with that. And poetry should be about play. And then once you make kids understand that, I feel like they would then go on to enjoy it. They would then go on to hopefully write poems for themselves in their own spare time, which is always healthy. They could then go on and perform poetry on an open mic like I did eventually. And then once they get to that point, I would just tell all of them to keep enjoying all these open mics. A symphony of clicks when you stumble on your favorite lines. The flutter in your belly. The sudden realization that your knees have turned to jelly. It's like you've walked 8 miles, arms are heavy. Double checked your sweater already, there's no spaghetti. Then your name's called out. Whole crowd goes so loud, approach the mic. Everything is silent now, a ghost town. They all wait for what goes down. You open your mouth, but the words won't come out. Nerves and doubts, dropped all your verbs and nouns. They're on the ground, everything is urgent now. Before you know it, it's all over. You sat down amongst the crowd, keeping all of your composure. Friends in your ear saying, sick man, I told you, but you can't help feeling like a breakup without closure. Watch. You're back next month for more exposure. Weren't at your best, but by then you'll be way closer. Your next poem will need a chauffeur and promoter. Bars cold like solar. No, I mean polar. In between both, this next poem's bipolar. Bestows so much wisdom they think you're an older. And if they don't listen, then just shrug your shoulders. You're just ahead of your time, ahead of the curve. You're headed to 9 open mics. This one's only the 3rd, and it's only occurred. No one remembers you from last time, and that kind of hurts. You keep thinking, twisting that knife and make it all worse. Is there any point in saying all these words that you learn? What's the point in working so hard if none of it works? What's the point even performing if no one's immersed? Don't Don't pretend to pay attention. You were just in your purse. And you want any better, you just order desserts. Yeah, and you spend more time readjusting your shirt. And you check your phone for every little alert. And you, I have no more words. I'm like the worst shepherd, no control of the herd. I called you all sheep, that's the least you deserve. And if you see me on the streets, I suggest you divert. And before I get off stage, I need one last thing from you, nerds. If you don't raise the roof, I will never return.